like a lot of you, I'm actually a designer, and that's why I dress like this. And the reason I'm doing this is because the idea of a brief, someone comes to you with a brief, we're a furniture company, and like everyone who's involved in making offices, there's a huge period of, there's a big cycle between the first discussions of that project and the delivery of it. And we increasingly found ourselves getting things wrong. And how do you get things wrong? You get things wrong because you don't recognize the landscape that you're within. And that's why I rather than talk about research, I'd rather define it as map drawing. You know, if you're out walking and you have an ordnance survey map, or you go to Amsterdam for the weekend and you've got a digital map on your iPhone, that map makes the walk or the weekend much more rewarding, and you use your time wisely. And my suggestion to you is that we need to redraw rapidly the map in which all of us operate, because our world is changing much quicker than we might want to think. I'm not a technology utopian. I don't believe in utopianism. I think it's completely overhyped. But I think the consequences of it will hit us nonetheless. I think, like all brave new worlds, they're always over-egged and over-exaggerated, I think falsely. But this slide is new, and I've even got a newer one this morning when I was brushing my teeth before I got in the taxi to go to the airport to come here. The CEO of Tesco was on explaining why the profits had slumped through the last year. And he used this wonderful expression as, well, you know, it's difficult because no one anticipated the iPhone and the internet and the digital shopping. Like, fuck. What he should have said is, we missed that, huh? We just got it wrong because we didn't pay attention to what was going on. And like this, I mean, and this is serious stuff. You know, all of these high street retailers going bankrupt because they didn't see the rapid rise of internet shopping. And I remember having this discussion with many people saying it's not going to happen. What I would like to do with this 45 minutes is I'm not going into the stats, the facts, and the figures of that report, because that's better enjoyed reading the report itself. What I want to do is to define the culture of what this report is articulating. And the reason we talk about boomers and millennials, and all of you who are in the generation in between, is only to get some clarity into the discussion, because the boomers and millennials are the two bookend generations. And if you concentrate on that, then you get a little bit more articulation into that. But through this discussion, I'm going to talk about a lot more than what's in this report, because this report, as we said, it's ongoing. It's, you know, and it's even, you'll see in some of the slides, I'm having to stick post-it notes on it because it becomes irrelevant so quickly. I'm sure a lot of you know the great Peter Drucker, one of the best business thinkers of the last 50 years. And I think Peter said this in the 1970s. The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, it's to act with yesterday's logic. And that's what we are superb at doing. We're superb at acting with yesterday's logic. And this is a global agenda, you know, and it's happening quicker and faster. And when you go to Singapore, you go to Hong Kong, you go to Shanghai, and then, as I do, come back into London and then get the Heathrow Express, and you see all that legacy outside the train window, which is not what you've seen in Singapore. And it's scary because all of us, what we're having to do continuously is to deliver value. And as I said earlier, it's not about delivering low cost, it's about delivering value. And value has been rapidly redefined in our economies in Europe. I mean, how is it not when a cup of coffee costs £2.80? You know, how can we justify the salaries that we need to prosper? Well, I believe that we can, I'm an optimist. But what I'm saying is we have to pay attention that our world is a global world. And all the changes that are happening here is actually happening faster and quicker over there, and that's documented quite well. You know, that's something I believe. In the future, there'll be two kinds of companies, the quick and the dead. Like it or not, we have no choice. And it used to be that in business, the big ate the small. Now the fast eat the slow. Huh? And I love this one, you know. There's a great Eskimo saying, the lead husky is the only one with the view. Okay, you get cold, you know, but at least you can dictate where the sledge is going to go. Because our issue is this: how will work be defined in 2018, and what will the workplace look like? And all of us, today, what you've all done, what we all do day in and day out, is make judgment calls. That's what our jobs are about. We're making judgment calls. And what's critical for our well-being and for our clients' well-being is that we make the right judgment calls. Because you know very well, the best kind of business to have is relationship businesses where you're nurturing your clients. You don't just do one project and then you move on. You hopefully develop a relationship. Now, that doesn't happen if you send clients up cul-de-sacs and then they come back to you and you say, well, you never told us this was going to happen. And I know from the talks that I gave that one of the most frustrated creatures on the planet are architects. Because architects know this, and they're trying to articulate this to their clients, and a lot of the time they're failing. And that's why, as a furniture company, we are researching this and we're publishing this, because, you know, I use the phrase, a great shopping street is not a great shopping street because there's one shop on it. It's a great shopping street because there's lots of great shops on it. And the more we articulate these issues and the more we share these issues and the more that we present these issues to our clients, the easier the challenges might become. Because my suggestion is this, is we're in a perfect storm. We have been, and you guys, you know, got this storm more severely than a lot of other people. But this storm is the global economy, the pace of technology change, and generations seeing the world differently. All of these things are conspiring together to whip up a perfect storm. And the big issue is this: corporations and offices are like, and I know that's a container ship, but because I'm a designer, I like the image. I thought the image was cool. And you know the idea that a supertanker takes a long, long time to maneuver, reposition itself. The corporate organization is exactly the same. Because of the legacy of building stock and the legacy of technology, they can see this perfect storm, huh? They can see it. They're not that thick. Some of them are. How do they respond? So my suggestion is a lot of companies are starting to conduct experiments, trying things out. Let's not just cook the whole thing. Let's just make a little experiment. And we see that increasingly happening, clients making test cases to see what's going on. Here I'm just diving into the report a little bit, but I'm diving in because I want to pick this out. Society will keep evolving under its own power, but a thoughtful strategy to derive strength from diversity takes conscious effort. And it's this diversity that shapes our world. You can't stop a train, but you can miss it. And I love that sentiment because missing trains is ever so easy, you know. I'm sure some of you missed the train that you were supposed to catch this morning. It's not just that we miss trains individually. Shipbuilding and steelmaking, I'm Scottish, and where I came from in central Scotland, we were fucking masters of the universe at steelmaking and shipbuilding. We were really good at it. And it's gone, it's a wasteland now. It's not that those two industries are not of relevance to the global economy, they're even more relevant to the global economy, but they're not happening in Scotland where I came from. Those trains were missed for whatever the political and economic reasons of the time that they've gone. Pittsburgh, it's gone. You know, a city in the States is gone. One of the centre of steelmaking, gone. Iceland, well, it's not gone, but, you know, the Icelandics are all standing at geysers naked for the next 5 years. Not because they missed the train, they got on the wrong train. And there was no driver on the train. You know, the crazy scenario of what happened in Iceland, this is systematic, you know. And what I want to talk about through this presentation is, you know, we all do this and it's ever so easy to do this. Kodak. Kodak ran the world in photographic image making. They ran it. They were a brilliant company, amazing brand, you know, talk about graphic designs, beautiful stuff. Gone. How's that possible? You know, all of those executives earning all that money, sitting in big boardrooms with big walnut tables and comfortable leather chairs. And they didn't see their world moving from that to that. Because it's easier than we think. Missing trains is really easy. You know, in hindsight, it's easy to say, but you know what, it's not. We could all do it. Look at this. I love the whole discourse between Apple and Microsoft. And what I just love, you know, that in 2000, Microsoft were a £510 billion company and Apple were just struggling at 4.8. And I just go to the end. Apple now make more money from their iPhone than Microsoft achieves with everything they do. Ah! How's that possible? And Microsoft were, masters, like Kodak, masters of the universe. BlackBerry and Nokia, the same. Two brilliant companies. They made the wrong judgment calls and they shafted the company. Fortunately, there was enough money in the bank to try and claw their way back, which they're doing, and hopefully they'll do it successfully. And you can imagine, the guys in development, see this touchscreen stuff? It's not going to happen, is it? All of us, that's the nature of the decisions, because our world changes like that really, really quickly by making the wrong judgment calls. HTC, a little company that grew incredibly quickly. A company that I really admire and think are great. And very, very quickly, they go from being, cool and great to being a pain in the ass for investors, for the financial world. But again, hopefully they come back because they're a great company. And I love this, I came across this last summer because the last time I read about Angola, it was a city destroyed by civil war. The next time I read about it, Angolans are in the process of getting high-speed 4G services ahead of most of Europe and many parts of the US. They're going to get better connectivity than I will in London. Why? Well, because the Chinese are investing in it. And you know what? They're giving all the handsets away for free because they know they've got an income stream out of a rising economy through the next 5 years. I mean, how ironic is that? And then to rub salt into the wind, Angola's capital, Luanda, has become a magnet for workers freeing Portugal's ailing economy. And then rich Angolans are going into Portugal and buying up really inexpensive, good value deals in Portugal. So in a sense, this is just to articulate a little bit this idea of the 4 generations and what I'm saying. We focus on the 2. Because what's the difference between 1980 and 1990? A little. What's the difference between 1980 and 2000? You get more clarity into it. But what I like about it is this slide. The UK, we have 16 million millennials and 50 million boomers. You go to China and it's 415 million millennials and 325 million boomers. And they're not all in rice fields, huh? You go to Shanghai and their shops are cooler than our shops. That's scary, huh? And it's something, that we need to stamp. Universities should certainly have that over the entrance. Listen, guys, listen. You might think that we live in a cool place with a great legacy. Well, that's evaporating. And not only that, but I'm sure it's the same in Ireland. The average age in the UK is 40. In India, it's 26. In Brazil, it's 29. In China, it's in the low 30s. So not only have we got legacy of infrastructure, we've got legacy of the inhabitants of the infrastructure as well. And yet all of this technology is coming on stream, and we're going to have to use it and use it really rapidly and really successfully. Okay, we talk about the demographics and the really fabulously interesting stuff. By 2050, more than 1/3 of the labour force will be over the age of 50. And this, this will cause a few of you to laugh. This comes out of a great piece of American research, wealth or kippers. And a kipper is a kid's and parents' pockets eroding retirement savings. And any of you, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend the HBO series Girls. And the pilot episode of it is so painfully beautiful, of mum and dad supporting and trying to cut the water off, and it's not quite working. And the whole maelstrom of us thinking that we were saving towards a golden retirement. The money's not there, And we had the government in England saying, if you're 55, you're going to have to re-educate yourself because you're not fucking retiring because there's no money. And we articulate, some examples, but you'll see that increasing through the whole cities bankrupt because they have a pension liability for the postman and the gravedigger and the fireman and the policeman. Were promised in the 70s and the 80s a fabulous retirement. The money's not there. And the big issue about this is that politicians will not talk about this because they don't care, because their hamster wheel only goes round in 4-year cycles. And this subject matter is too big for that 4-year cycle, so they would rather avoid the issue. which is what's happening. But we're going to have to recalibrate how all of this stacks up, or we'll pay the price. 70% of workers plan to work into their retirement, almost 50% expect never to retire. And the whole dynamics of this is really interesting, because if you look at the researchers, a lot of 50-year-olds are incredibly important to organizations, and that's why we, in the report, we talk about this wonderful dynamic between, and this practice more in the States, is you see the 45 CEO, and he's got a little trail of 3 or 4 millennials behind him, because they believe intrinsically in this partnership, both having profoundly different values, but values that are intrinsically important to the well-being of a company. Now, what's really interesting for all of us is and I'll explain this more, we're increasingly, not only are we moving away from the desk, our desk, we're actually moving away from our building and into multiple buildings, because technology is allowing that to happen. The ergonomic, emotional, acoustic, psychological values of a 50-year-old are not the same as a 25-year-old. And yet they're working together. The guys that work with me, they come in with the jeans down here, and they come in at 10 o'clock, and I say, can you pull your jeans up, and can you come in at 9:15 like the rest of us? No. And I used to hit my head on the wall about it, but now I don't, because I know, what's the point? Stupid, what's the point? They're different. Recognize it, because it's not that they're not doing the work, they're doing amazing work, but they do it differently to me. I believe in coming in and working from 9 till 8 and always being there and being visible. Bollocks! If I want to go for a swim, they'll go for a swim. And they'll come in all weekend because they want to do great work. But they're profoundly different. The idea, and I learned this the hard way, the idea that you can give a 25-year-old a project and then leave them for 2 weeks is nonsense. They'll be lost round the back after the second day doing something completely different. I mean, I've been out of the office for 3 days, and I'll go back and I'll look down, that's not what we discussed, because I've been away too long. And what we have to do is we have to understand that these differences are there. The baby boomers, 3 big insights is boomers invented youth culture. This is nice, huh? And I use the example of Cream, or as I was told after one presentation, the Cream, 1968, the Royal Albert Hall. They look gorgeous, stunning, huh? Amazing. And the music was amazing. So Mum and Dad invented all of this stuff. There was no technology, but they invented it. And kids know that. Kids know that. And that's why we robbed all the coolness of fashion, and all they're left with, apart from a few glorious exceptions like Alistair McQueen, is the trousers round the bum and the crotch down here. It's all that was left. Because Mum and Dad had done all these amazing, just look back at those images, the stunning stuff. But for boomers, work to find them. Who are you? What do you do? That was to my generation, that was fundamental. To 25-year-olds, it is not. And they'll take a job. Look, I know that this perfect storm and things have been tough, but I'm talking globally, and you will come through this storm as well. They'll take a job, and when they're due to start on the Monday, they don't pitch up because, hey, I got a different offer and I forgot to tell you. And you can get mad about it, but the moral of the story is it's different. It's profoundly different. And as I said, boomers are 95 natives, unlike millennials. Now, the thing about this is millennials, like in the computer games and the movies, they've got this backpack of their new world of technology, and they're on the march, like they're, and, you can maybe shoot one, like in Game of Thrones, or 2, but you're finished. They will just wash over you. And this dynamism is causing companies to think again. And what's that, as a designer, something that, and I think I'm quite bright, but I didn't even see this going around offices worldwide and looking at them. And millennials will want a physical, it's hardly surprising, they dress really differently, so they want a physically different space. And that's why you see this phenomenon of what people call, the Google space, the dustbin with the glass on it and Granny's armchair. For the same reason that they dress differently, they want a physically different environment. And as I said, think the ergonomic emotional values of the 50-year-old. So offices are going to become more pluralist because you've got people with profoundly different tastes. And those 25-year-olds and 30-year-olds are important to the company. So why should they sit in a space? You know, I grew up, I'm a classic designer, I grew up with what's good design? Okay, good design is Herman Miller, it's Knoll, it's Steelcase. Good design. It's not to a 25-year-old. They'll go on, and this is fascinating. I grew up with a library. They grew up with a screen. And you type in 1970s cool furniture, 1960s cool furniture, and you get 10,000 images of amazing, diverse stuff. That's the way they see the world. It's not the way I see the world. And they're saying, look, I don't want your cool chair. I want my Grand's armchair. And I want Grand's lampshade. The problem is I remember Grand's lampshade. They don't. It was never there. And it does have a beauty. And so our whole idea of what's good design and what's not good design, as far as I'm concerned, is changing profoundly. And it's got a lot to, you know, we did this, you know. I grew up in this phenomenon of helicopter parenting. When I grew up in the summer holidays, we would go out the house at 7 o'clock, or not 7 o'clock, we were fucking fast asleep at 7 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, and then we'd come back at 10 o'clock at night. And we had sort of killed a couple of frogs, tried to derail a train. By the end of the summer, someone had fallen out the tree and broken something. That's what happened. And Mum and Dad didn't give a toss. This is a generation coming into the workplace for whom Mum and Dad, like the helicopter, have been over them their whole bloody life. John's got to get to the football by 6 o'clock, and don't forget she's going to go round and they're having tea. And then don't forget, we promised that Gran would get them round there by their whole life. So you imagine the consequences of that. That means you have a generation who are used to that. And when that goes away, there's a little sense of aimlessness. We found something really interesting. One of the best offices in Europe are Microsoft in Schiphol. It was voted the best office in Europe a couple of years on the running. And we found out from them that what really shocked them, and this is a brilliant project, I'm sure a lot of you have seen it, is the people who adapted to not having, and this is, you know, 7 years ago, shared office spaces. The ones who jumped into it were the 40-year-olds and the 50-year-olds. They embraced it. The ones who struggled were the graduates. Well, of course, because they needed mentoring and tutoring. They wanted people beside them to show them how things work. And they struggled with people not being there. Where's John? Oh, he's in The Hague, or he's not in today. They needed that, and even a great company like that got it wrong. And I'm just throwing this in to show you how more, this is from a quite recent report from J. Walter Thompson, where they've gone further upstream, and they're talking about screenagers, so the generation below the millennials. And the reason I'm showing this is this. My online friends understand me better than you. 33%. It's more convenient online than in real life. Nearly 60% of under 18s believe it's more convenient. It's more comfortable and fun talking online than in person. You know, the phenomenon of they're phoning down from the room and saying, is dinner ready? Because that's their world. And in the office world, we've not realigned how we make workspaces and how we deal with work quick enough to deal with this, because this thing has happened quicker than we anticipated. Okay, so I'm not going to go through it. So let's move on to the technology a little bit. And Ray Ozzie used to be, you know, he's a great technologist. It's important that all of us do precisely what our customers and competitors will ultimately do. Close our eyes and form a realistic picture of what a post-PC world might actually look like. You travel the world, it's changing, but not much. Go to Business District, look up all the tower blocks, all the office towers, one after, and they're all orientated around the superiority of the desking system. Rows upon rows upon rows of desks. Why? Because they're responding to the fixed and tethered technology of the PC. That's going to change, and it's going to change incredibly quickly. So how do you make office environments dedicated to seeing the world in the old way rather than in the new way? And the reason for this is an interesting piece of insight, isn't it? In the 1880s, 4 key inventions shaped the office we still identify with today. The electric light bulb, the telephone, the typewriter, and the elevator. So for 125 years, we were connecting pieces of furniture together, not people. And whether you look at an office as the 1890s, the 1940s, the 1960s, that's why we had this thing about office systems. We were connecting furniture together. In our world, we're connecting people together, not furniture. Only a couple of words has changed, but the consequence of that, I suggest to you, is profound. We're not connecting the furniture, we're connecting the people. And those people don't even need to be in the same building anymore. And this has happened really quickly. And part of the reason for this is, one of the big influences of this was Apple, and I've given up on that. That's why I've just whacked Post-it notes on the slides. In the first quarter of last year, their profits, not their turnover, was 7.2 billion, selling 35 million phones and 12 million iPads. This was not anticipated, as I'll explain a little later on. This came into our world, and what was cool about Apple is they addressed all the corporate problems, because a lot of cool executives said about the first iPhones, yeah, we would like to use that, and the technology consultants would say, no, we can't use this within our systems, and they addressed those issues really, really quickly. And I use, in a sense, the idea of apps, because our world has broken down, and you see that with a generation who, if you think that the app is a game or something interesting for the weekend, you're wrong. It's a profoundly important business tool, and it costs like 85p or £1.20, and it does amazing things, whatever you want it to do. That's also redefined the whole attitude about, the kids who work with me just think I'm so sad because I only communicate with them through email, because that's my choice. I'm not doing what they do. I don't want to, I work too much. I just don't want to be bothered all the bloody time with all of this stuff coming in. But if this stuff isn't coming into them, they're not alive, they're dead. Whereas I'm the opposite. It kills me. But it's there, and it's big. And the big issue is this, If you look at Facebook and Google and Twitter, their agenda is more, faster, more, faster. That's how this is shaping up. And you know what? We do this stuff and we don't even think about it. I use the analogy, you go to the expensive shops in Madison Avenue, New York, or Rodeo Drive in Los Angeles, and you will see 50-year-old women with faces like this. And it's really painful. And you'll see them in Los Angeles, and when they turn left, they do that. Because they were first into the soup of plastic surgery. And the plastic surgeon said, look, you look cool. First time you look cool. What he didn't say is, if you do this continuously over a 20-year cycle, you look like Michael Jackson. And they all look like Michael Jackson. When we invented the X-ray, an amazing invention. For the best part of 40 years, when we took our children into department stores, we X-rayed their feet to get a good fit on their shoe. Even though we knew, not sure about this. We just get into this and swim away. And we don't know what we're doing. We don't know the consequences of it. And slowly we're starting to wake up. But I've got from having done this, I've got one suggestion to you that I think is really important. Offices will have to become more humane environments, more diverse environments, more interesting environments, not because the corporation wants it, because they're going to have to give back. Because technology is all about take. In a year's time, I'll phone you and I'll say, how's the coffee? Because I can see where you're sitting in a coffee shop in St. Stephen's Green, huh? And I won't need to ask you what you did last week, because I can see what you did last week. Every bloody thing, I'll see what you've done. Because in the digital world, you're visible all the time. And the idea of saying, oh, no, I'm going out on Tuesday afternoon. There's no going out. Because big data means this is cheap to process. Get the analytics on it really quickly, inexpensively. Our world is there and it's continuously visible. So offices will have to, because we're not machines, and corporations recognize this, and that's why very quickly you will see offices change, because they know they're going to have to soften them down and they're going to have to make them more pleasant places to be, because it's difficult to switch off from technology. I just give, you know, and also the free enterprise nature of our culture. You know, the whole thing about, you know, I recognize it was a cool little Swedish company. If you're on the digital world, they'll take your photograph and it'll tell me very quickly who you are. Now that's cool if you're a 20-year-old kid in a club. It's not cool if you're in Russia. And this stuff is all there, free, distributed worldwide, because that's the nature of our, you know, our global enterprise is just to endeavor and do. That's what we do, especially all the guys in Palo Alto. That's their mindset. Because the next big thing is, you know, this is mobility. You know, moving. Our workplace technology is on the brink of a revolution that promises to boost productivity by expanding office functionality, first beyond the desk, and now beyond the brick and mortar location. So very quickly, you know, I started to talk about being not at your desk, huh? And before I even got to finishing writing the bloody thing, it's not being away from the desk, it's being away from the bloody building. Why do you need to go into the building if the technology is going to allow us anywhere access? And it's not just, you know, this, I mean, I know that some of you will say, yeah, but bloody hell, it's impossible to, it'll all change, it will all happen quite quickly. It will become smooth because we're now, you know, we're now in the era of big data. You know, we are now at the foothills of what McKinsey has described as the fifth wave in technology revolution. Mainframes, personal computing, and the internet have transformed the world of business beyond. And the next big one is big data, you know, the PC, internet, and Web 1, Web 2, and big data. And what's big data? Remember, I'm a designer, I'm not a technologist, and I like this way, I like this explanation because I'm a simple man. Sometime around 2009, the number of things connected to the internet surpassed the number of connected people, at which point we began to express the Internet of Things. You know, my dog's connected to the internet. You know, how cool is that? I didn't know that, but then rapidly you move from that into what we're now calling the Internet of Everything. And the Internet of Everything has to do with this, and I just like this movie, but I know it's a little bit evangelistic and it's a little bit of sale-orientated, but I think it's a nice way of articulating what I'm talking about, what our world is going to do.
What if the next big thing isn't a thing at all? It's lots of things, all waking up. Becoming part of the global phenomenon we call the Internet of Everything. Trees will talk to networks, will talk to scientists about climate change. Cars will talk to road sensors, will talk to stoplights about traffic efficiency. The ambulance will talk to patient records, will talk to doctors about saving lives. It's going to be amazing and exciting, and maybe, most remarkably, not that far away. The next big thing, we're going to wake the world up and watch with eyes wide as it gets to work. Cisco, tomorrow starts here.
Yeah, you know, society's always been changing quickly, so you would think we would be used to it by now, and that's, you know, the next 10 minutes, that's what I'm going to talk about, because I love this slide. You know, the world has moved further ahead since the Queen was born in the previous 2,000 years of history. And you would think someone said that last year to celebrate our great Queen's Diamond Jubilee. It wasn't. It was said by Mark Twain when he was visiting London for Queen Victoria's in 1897. We've always been doing this stuff. We've always been doing the new. You know, think about it. If Mark Twain was able to say that, there must have been profound changes that he found. And you know the adage, like at sport, practice makes perfect, you know. You just practice and you get good. And you would think, well, you know, me, my parents, my grandparents, my dad, they've always been dealing with change. We would be good at it by now, but we're bloody well not because of this. This is the lead trousers and the lead dresses that we wear into the work every day, maintaining the status quo, the tyranny of groupthink and the shock of the new. And this is a wonderful example of, you know, the status quo. Now, this is his official photographs from a couple of summers ago. And this is a man, you know, have you looked at the world map? Do you know how big Russia is? It's bloody humongous, it's enormous. And this man thinks that by taking it, look, I can get the hunting and shooting stuff, But at my age, your body goes, huh? You know, put a cool t-shirt on. You know, his wife would have said, look, do that, but... And you know, the idea of brick economies. And Russia, okay, it's got amazing resources, but it's a struggling economy because that man is not recognizing everything that I'm talking about in this talk. He's ignoring it. And these are great examples. You know, the Blue Bucket protests in Moscow. If you were in a position of power in Moscow and St. Petersburg, you could put a blue siren on your car and just get into all the lanes, you know, so that what happened is people in power, they were going for a pizza with the blue light. They were going to the football with the blue light. And a generation said, oh, stuff that. So first online and then physically they formed what was called the Blue Bucket protest movement. And everyone started en masse just arriving with blue buckets on their head. And this guy here obviously had the decision, I'm going to have the biggest bucket because I'm more pissed off than anyone else. You know what? But what I love about it is this new world flipped something with charm and a smile on its face. Why? Because it made the people who still continue to use the blue siren look ridiculous. Huh? I like that. You know, and that got out of control, but Pussy Riot, when it first started, these kids appearing on churches and stuff, belting out, and then the guys, the boomers in power, not understanding how was it possible for 3,000 of them suddenly to appear outside just as they played the song, and as soon as the song was finished, they'd all gone. Or that, you know, the tragic death of Mohammed Bouazizi, you know, in Tunisia, who fought the status quo of the corrupt police force, taking part of his daily pittance that he was able to make as a fruit seller, and we're still living with the consequence of that. That world flipped. That status quo was challenged. And I love this, you know, because 10 years ago, tattoos were really cool, you know, and all kids adopted these fabulous, beautiful objects. And we're now in, it's such a status quo, your gran turns up with a lizard on her toe. How cool is that? It's not, is it? The tyranny of groupthink, you know. For some of you are not old enough to remember this, but there was something called the Y2K bug. And you were all laughing because you all remember the stupidity of it. The fuck is going to stop? What are we going to do? We don't know what we're going to do. And we managed globally. Gartner, who's a great tech research company, worked out that we spent $600 billion fixing a problem that wasn't there. And what's charming about it is Apple were struggling at this point, and Apple ran an ad that says, we might not get everything right, but at least we knew when the century was going to end because Macs were configured for 29,940, just coincidentally. But we convinced ourselves that the world was going to end, and this is painful for you. You know, Paul Krugman's a Nobel economist, a brilliant New York writer, and I recommend, I'm sure some of you already read this wonderful book, End This Depression Now, because there's a whole school of thought saying that all of the politicians are screwing up. There's a strong desire to see economics as a morality play. In 2010, much of the world's policy elite decided to throw out the textbooks and lessons of history to deliver groupthink that we need to be punished for sins that, in the most part, never happened. Now, I know that some sins did happen, but the moral of Paul Krugman and a lot of other great economists are saying they're taking it too fucking far. How can you grow if no one's spending money? It doesn't work. And we're conducting experiments on countries like Greece that are dangerous because we did things like this before in the 1940s and bad things happened from it. You can push society in a certain way, but it's the moral of the story that we work in such a fast-pacing world and a lot of people make the wrong judgment calls. And also the shock of the new. You know, in 1733, John Kay invented the flying shuttle, and the Luddites, you know, it's where the term comes from, they burnt his house down. You know, a great new piece of technology. What did we do? John Hargreaves, who invented another cool piece of technology, what did we do? We burnt his house down because it was a shock of the new. You know, we got the first steamboat up and running and it sailed up the Rhine. What did we do? We destroyed it. Because it's shock of the new. Now, the good news is we're on top of the violence, more or less. We've got the violence under control, but the shock of the new, and any of you, all of us, we all know the Aeron chair, one of the icons of our age, an amazing office chair. And all of this is available online. When Herman Miller presented that chair to the world for the first time, the response was, it's disgusting. It's a piece of shit. You're insulting me. You expect me to go into my company and suggest we buy 2,000 of these. You're mad. It's ugly. And it's not even finished. Where's the upholstery? Piss off. And then you know what? When it's finished, bring it back and we'll continue the discussion. You know, fortunately, Herman Miller, probably because they'd spent so much money doing it, had nothing to lose, had they? They put it out, and what happened is it changed the world of office seating. Every company now has their mesh chair. Not only that, we all benefited from this because the value of how you define an office chair was redefined. The bar was raised up, because that's what great enterprise, great industry does. The bar was raised up. The quality of architecture around us now is much superior to, well, in the 1970s, the 1950s. We get better all the time. The iPad, you're having a laugh. I'm not. When the iPad was previewed in January, it went on public release in April. It was previewed to the geek world. In the geek world, because the technology involved in the iPad had been kicking around for 6-7 years, and the technology world said, this is useless. People aren't going to use this. You know, Steve Jobs knows what I'm thinking. Does the world really need a tablet computer? The idea's been around forever in geek years. It's just not going to happen. And I love this as a wonderful observation. It's a nice reader, but there's nothing on the iPad I look at and say, oh, I wish Microsoft had done that. The great, great Bill Gates said that. Bill Gates missed that train because it's easy to do. What I've been saying, it's really, really easy. And you would think, how is that possible? For someone to be so bright and so in the tech world, to see this piece of technology that has changed our world profoundly and make a profoundly wrong judgment call about it. And, you know, in the UK, Dyson, a great, you know, a huge admirer of that company, because in the early 80s, he was rejected because he didn't understand the value of replacement dust bags. Because the status quo was, you know, we don't make, okay, you get the vacuum cleaner, but then you suck them in for life with the replacement bags. They always come back for the bags. You know, and he, like Steve Jobs, was a rare animal that said, stuff you, I'll try it myself. And he's now a £1 billion company with £300 million profit, inventing great new products continuously. And these are the exception because it's really hard work. You know, we're an office company, and making things is crazy. Doing architecture, you're all nuts. It's crazy stuff. Continuous, really hard work. But that's why all of what I'm saying to you is really relevant, because it's a waste of time doing the hard work if it's for the wrong thing in the wrong place, doing the wrong thing. And my suggestion to you is that, because I'm a sad person. Blade Runner is one of my favorite movies. I've seen it about 23 times. Beautiful movie. And there's, you know, when the credit comes up, and then this amazing scene of Los Angeles, and then the Vangelis. And I didn't notice until the last time, probably the 23rd time that I saw this movie, this sign comes up at the beginning of the movie, and it says, Los Angeles 2019. 2019 is a couple of years down the line, and Los Angeles isn't going to look like that. Ridley Scott, he made this in the early 80s. He could have put any bloody date on it, it didn't matter. But in 1984, he felt secure enough to project forward and to say, this is what Los Angeles is going to be like. We're useless at predicting the future. It's a big, messy maelstrom. And anyone that walks in and says with certainty, they're lying. There is lying to you, because we don't know. We know that bits are going to happen. We know it's good, but how it's going to shape up big time, we don't have a clue. So why not recognize that? Why not go on with it? Why not try to kid on that we know more securely what's going on? So I'll leave you with these two slides. This comes from the great Johan Cruyff. I could have used Lionel Messi for be more current, but no, I'm going back to the original. And now, you know, I'm a great football fan, you know, I'm an Arsenal fan, and I suffer the consequence of that. But he said something beautiful, and this is a sentiment I think is absolutely wonderful and relevant to our time. You don't move to where the ball is, you move to where it's going to be. And you see that with a great football team like Barcelona, and I've seen Barcelona many times, and you see things happen, and you don't know what happened. Because they were, and that's the definition for me of a great company. A great company is one that's moving into where the ball is going to be rather than where the ball has been. And the analogy is football is correct, because my suggestion to you is that our world is as pacey and as frantic as an amazing 90 minutes of football. So I'll leave you with this slide, because remember what I said to you at the beginning. Our conundrum is we have to deliver value. All of us have to define value. And this actually comes, I read this in a research paper, but it actually comes from the West Wing. There's an episode in the West Wing where the president says to his entourage, to develop, and this is just so good, to develop a pen that could write in space, NASA spent millions on advanced technology. The Russians used a pencil. Thank you very much.